welcome to Dropship 5 Armory. This is Banana here. I've got my two co-hosts with me, Matt 3049 and Snapstyle, as well as two guests, Bandit B17 from Marine Mechs, woo, and the Magician from SJR. Hello and welcome, guys.
Hello.
How you doing?
Pretty good. So we just wanted to go ahead and open up with some of the newer chassis that we've seen recently in the last month and a half. Kind of give a little bit of an overview of where the Kodiak's sitting now. They did a little bit of tamping on it. And how do we feel about it? I mean, obviously the tournament build's still running the original Kodiak, but I mean, we've been playing the original client a little bit. The mounts can't be beat, is my opinion. Like, it's still very fast and very nimble. But I have been noticing that lack of structure, especially, I'm referring to the Kodiak 3 variant here, actually, in specificity, since that's the most powerful variant that we're seeing a lot. I've been noticing that there is, with that lack of structure, there's a lot of, you lose your Gauss rifles really quickly if you get glanced in the back. So how do we feel about it? Still top tier, or?
I guess one question I have on that, and I saw your note about that. I'm not sure what not having additional structure has to do with necessarily the quickness that you have a crit occur. Obviously, plus armor would make a big difference because it, crits don't happen until you're exposed essentially. But I guess I don't see the correlation between. I mean, you could have bonus 1000 structure. It doesn't mean you're gonna necessarily be crit out any faster or not as fast, I guess, when you take a hit. Unless I'm missing something on the science there, but my understanding is that once the armor's gone, it's essentially a dice roll. So if they added like 30 structure into the side torso, in terms of critting, your Gauss is still going to get crit out at the same chance. It's not increasing or decreasing the chance that per hit a crit will occur. It just means that if you don't get crit out, the component, the entire torso would die sooner, I guess.
Yeah. Well, actually, one thing, because they removed the structure quirks, you used to actually be able to survive Gauss explosion in that torso. Now it's just a straight up torso loss. So that definitely is a bit of a nerf on that respect. But
yeah, that makes sense.
The chances are still the same, yeah.
Yeah. So I suppose if you're doing dual Gauss, dual PPC, my understanding is that the PPCs are typically asymmetrical on one of the arms, and if that torso gets crit out, you lose 3 weapon systems in a well-placed, lucky roll, basically. Whereas if you were able to survive because of the additional structure, you might still have 2 PPCs and just lose the Gauss. So I can see where the structure, losing that structure could definitely hurt there.
Definitely, especially because you are ammo limited, I mean, on those Gauss rifles. I mean, you still have a lot of open tonnage to be able to carry about, I find about 5 tons is usually what I can carry. You're lucky if you get to use it all in a competitive match. But it's nice to keep the peeps around, but losing them to an torso explosion can be a little bit frustrating because then you're just running around. You're an exalted 100-tonner Gauss.
Definitely.
I think the thing with the Kodiak, though, is it pretty much drives the rest of the game. Everything else that you take in the game is a response to the Kodiak. For example, before the Kodiak came out, the Hunchback 2C with 3 large poles was probably the best build because it was often fighting Battle Masters, Banshees, occasionally a Direwolf, post nerf, occasionally you might see that. But now it's all you see is Kodiaks. You're fighting 2 Gauss, 2 PPC, or 4 Ultra C10s. And because of that level of firepower, you can't be exposed for the length of time that you used to as easily with those 3 large poles. So most players are now switching over to like 2 PPC Hunchbacks, just so they can get a quick shot and be right back behind cover. It's not always the case. People are still taking Warhammers and Grasshoppers and whatnot. But I do feel like everything is a response to the Kodiak. Even the strats you're seeing in the tournament right now. It's like, where are the Kodiaks? That's the most important thing.
Definitely. It's just, there's something undeniable about that front-loaded 60 points. It's terrifying to try and, you don't want to be standing out of any kind of cover for any length of time.
I mean, it's always existed, right? But the Kodiak is really, like, because of the hard points and everything, and the locations of the hard points, it's actually pulled it back into the prominent play. Because before, the only real option you had was, what, the Direwolf? You know, and aside
Knuckle
from
dragger.
aside from like maybe EMP doing something wacky, like that, you never really saw that in competitive play. Like the only dire wolves I saw in the last MWOWC season from higher rated teams was like, DACA Dyers was a big thing because the Black Widow, for example, towards the end of the season. But then again, I think the Kodiak has kind of revived PPC Gauss play, but it hasn't revived Pop Tart play. So like these games that we've been watching, honestly, I think have been probably some of the most exciting. I think because it's a very much skill based weapon. So
It's all or nothing too.
yeah, as opposed to hit scan.
Like you miss or you hit.
Yep. And those hits are a lot harder than hit scan weapons. So like the ability to make a play, like you're giving more power to the hands of the players, but if they miss, you don't get anything out of it. Whereas in the hit scan laser bomb meta, it was more about like, as long as you're kind of tracking your target, you guys are going to do okay.
Yeah, there is a bit of a greater divide, like you were saying, because it is so player skill based.
I do feel that with that meta, if one team is even a little bit less capable of landing their shots, because maybe the team they're up against is much better at dodging, or maybe they're worse at aiming. With hit scan, you'd still do some damage, you'd still deal some out, and potentially get your opponent to change up how they play. But with the PPC meta, you're either doing nothing or you're doing everything, and so you see a lot more, in my opinion, more one-sided matches when there's any skill discrepancy whatsoever. But when you have two teams that come together that are very close to each other in skill, it makes it that much more exciting when you get a close match, because especially the people who are in it and watching it all the time, they understand how rare that is and how exciting it is when it happens.
Definitely. I mean, we've seen some pretty crazy games actually casted by yourself. Some ones that we're sitting here in the TeamSpeak watching them and just laughing, because it's just, you don't see it, like you said, you do not see something that close very often. And it's better than sitting with like 6 mechs on a ridge, ER larges, hill humping and laser drilling into side torsos. I mean, there's a little bit of a different dynamic. I mean, the Mauler, touching back on what we covered a little bit before, the Mauler kind of brought in something that was new from that laser bomb, and so I think this is the right direction. Maybe they'll buff jump jets.
We even had a little bit of a revival on SRMs as well, which was exciting for a period. It kind of, I think SRMs are still very, very powerful, viable. Maybe not so on the map that we're forced to watch throughout this entire tournament on that build. But if we were on some of the other maps, maybe we would have seen a heck of a lot more brawling. And we're just not, because of Canyon Network, and Canyon's kind of a pop-tarty map. I mean, brawls can happen, but it's tough to push against a team of 8 people wailing on you with PPC Gauss.
Well, I think the Kodiak, though, is what stopped the brawl.
That is true.
The Kodiak, again, you had our large pulse medium lasers. I mean, you were playing Black Knights, as I was mentioning, with the Banshees or Battle Masters, and therefore you could get within, your 300 whatever meters for your SRMs, because that's half the distance of those large bolts. But now you're getting hit at 900 meters for 60 damage, and your side torsos crit in one shot. And if you have ammo there, you might even die in one shot. So it's completely changed the game. And nonetheless, the Alt-JC 10 spam, which can put out 80 damage really quick, and that's just made it so much harder for brawl mechs to get it within range.
So you'd have to be on something like Frozen City Night, the old one, in order to be able to even get into the SRM brawl distance when you've got Kodiaks on the field, essentially.
Yeah, especially with so many high positions on Canyon, because there's almost 3 tiers of play on Canyon. You've got your low ground, you've got your middle ground around Theta, middling ramps and stuff, and then you've got those high positions, and the Kodiaks are going to be sequestered up on some tight high position like Delta 3 for Team 1, and they're going to be just watching any lane. So it's really hard to try and sneak a whole team through, and you're not going to brawl with 3 max.
It's very easy to control Canyon Network, at least more than half, especially with Conquest. you can hold more than half the mech with just a loose spread of mechs, essentially, especially when you have confidence in the individual pilots that you send out to those flanks. If you know that they're going to be able to make good decisions and not just get rolled over, you can control the entire map with ease.
Yeah, it's definitely a map where map control is probably more important than other maps. Like, for example, I think if we go back to MWOWC, when we go back, I hope so, Bandit. But like Tourmaline, for example, the Conquest spawn points are incredibly close together. So, like, you may not see this type of meta happen in those kind of instances. Maybe I'll eat my words. I don't know, but I think it really does depend on the map, and I think Canyon, like, yes, it has a lot of hills and crevices, but they're so easily covered if you just spread out a little bit that, like, you can't really do an 8-man brawl push down a corridor when you have 2 Kodiaks looking down it. It's like those 2 Kodiaks can literally stop your whole team.
It's punishing to try and push against those at all.
It's a stark departure from what we've seen previously, where it's mobility races to then supreme firepower, now this Overwatch and whatnot. But
Well, something
it
about
is very interesting.
with the Kodiak as well, though. I mean, compared to the Direwolf, 2 PPC, you used to run 2 PPC Gauss, 2 Gauss, or sometimes even 3 PPC, 2 Gauss, and the Direwolf, and it was really good, but it did not have the speed the Kodiak has. It didn't have the general maneuverability. It didn't have as good of a side poke. I mean, I don't know. I'm concerned in general because these 2C mechs have shown that they are something more than anything else. I mean, Clan, the whole point of when they said Clan, the whole way of balancing Clan was to say, oh, you can't change out your engine. You can't do all this fine tuning. And then they're like, oh, we'll put out 2C mechs and you can do that now. And we'll give them some of the best hard points in the game. Come and buy them. So, yeah, it's not, I mean, they just announced that new mech, today. And I was like, looking at that, I'm like, well, it's 85 tons, but still, now you're going to have a jump jetting, PPC Gauss assault mech. Great.
My question is what, I mean, the mech's out. They can't really change the hard points all that much. The model's made. What can they do to, I guess, bring it a little bit more in line with the rest of the mechs to allow a resurfacing of some of what we've seen in the past? Like, does it have to be quirks? I mean, that seems to be the only tool we have in our toolbox right now. What do you think?
If I may. So one thing we saw previously with the skill tree rework, where they reduced the significant effects of the mobility, the turn rate, acceleration, is it changed the ability, like when the Direwolf was the top assault, from, okay, I can just turn and shoot a fire starter that's nipping at me, to, oh, now I have to be very careful. And while I can still do that if it's in front of me, if it gets behind me, it's a lot harder to work your way out of that sticky situation. So while undoubtedly the Kodiak is still going to be very strong because of it's 100 tons, it can carry this much firepower, it's going to present that much firepower, and it is fast. A community suggestion has been decoupling agility from the engine size, and which makes sense. You still keep your firepower, you still keep the ability to position relatively quickly, and if you can hold a good position, it rewards good play. You control the map, you control your lanes of fire, you're doing your job. But at the same time, it means you don't have I wouldn't say it's an exact get out of jail free card, but if a light or a very, very agile medium gets behind you, that provides much more dire consequences for you.
Would that, I mean, if they did that, would they have to do that across the board for all engines? And is that going to completely destroy some mechs that were viable or in the past? I'm worried about sweeping changes like that. Were you going to do it for just the Kodiaks or for all engines, decoupling the agility?
In some regards, that if it were a sweeping change, that would have to be heavily reevaluated. All the mechs would. It would take a lot of time, and I wouldn't say for sure, hey, let's have it out this September. But like you said, quirks, that's another tool that we can use. When the Timber A side torso came out for the left torso, I was very, very impressed that they ended up changing it so that it had less mobility. That may be a potential route.
To me, that's if a mech is going to be insanely powerful because of its hard points and not necessarily the weapons it brings. In this case, it's both. But in my opinion, if something's going to be so strong like that, the only thing that I can think of, instead of just directly attacking those weapons like heat generation, range, etc., like they've done in the past, maybe the only answer is to make it less agile via quirks, which I know people will be like, no, don't touch it. But, maybe that's what you got to do is it's a risk reward. It's harder to peek in a Kodiak now because it has 30% less acceleration than it did before. So now you can still bring it and you can still put out some huge damage, but it could have potentially harmed it in a higher skill match because you can't peek, shoot, and get out in time, You got to be careful how much they do it, though.
I haven't quite looked at the actual client because of the tournament going on, but
Yeah.
have they nerfed? Didn't they nerf the agility like pretty hard already?
Not really.
Or was it just the structure?
I think they removed the agility quirks it was given, didn't they? And then they added structure to I think the CT.
I'm almost inclined to say that we should maybe
Oh.
widen out the 3.
I mean, yeah, prefacing this by saying we are pretty much specifically talking about the 3 because it is the only one that takes dual shoulder ballistics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's no other one that can. Yeah.
Plus, I think a lot of us are basing, like, especially, like Mag and the rest of us, like, the tournament client is not going to be around forever. And the actual Kodiak did get its agility nerf, correct? So, I mean, maybe we shouldn't jump to major conclusions on that. I do agree that the Kodiak as it is in the tournament client was ridiculous. But
the Kodiak's still averaging 1,000 damage games often. So often.
Yes.
Yeah. And people are, if you look at the KDR for Assault Leader, on there, it's all due to Kodiaks.
That is.
I have actually the quirk changes that they did with the last wave here. They used to have 35% acceleration and deceleration on the 3. They've lowered it to 0. Turn rate was 25%. They lowered it to 0. Turn rate, they lowered it to 0. That was torso turn rate. They did add 5 structure to the center torso. They removed 5 structure to left and right torso and removed 5 from left arm, left leg, right leg. So, and they're at 0 for current acceleration, deceleration, but it still is a Clan XL 400. It's nimble, like, comparatively.
Yeah, that thing with speed tweak, that thing's chugging along at just shy of 70. That's terrifying.
Yeah.
Maybe
and max speed is big, but I'm thinking more of especially with Gauss PPC, max speed. You rarely get to max speed necessarily when you're in a peak war. So that's where the agility, being able to twist off the damage and immediately get back into cover after taking a shot, maybe that's what they can hit to put it a little bit more in line with other mechs. But you'd have to go into the negative quirks then, and maybe that's what they need to do.
Let's compare the Kodiak to the Highlander, right? The Highlander dominated the game way back when, even with the PPC Gauss before they started adding the Gauss charge time. But there's a huge difference between the Highlander now and the Kodiak now, and that's partly the speed of the weapons. But it's also the Clan XL. I mean, that is such an advantage still. That if you take in a Highlander and you put an XL engine in there, you lose one side, you're dead. Whereas a Kodiak, you can still lose that entire side and have 3 of your weapons left. So, yeah, you got some speed and heat nerfs there, but it's not that big of a deal. And you also have the range. So IS, ER, PPCs are really hot, especially if you don't have quirks. So you can't really run those. So you don't have that extra speed of your weapons. And you don't get that huge targeting computer if you want, which adds like an extra 20% to your speed of your weapons. So Clan pretty much has all the advantages if they want to build it that way. I mean, people with their Hunchbacks 2Cs, for example, can run anywhere from targeting computer 1 to like a 5. get 30% extra PPC speed.
Yep.
That's a huge deal. The IS has nothing. They can't. The only way they can do that is on the few mechs that actually have like that as a quirk. But for the general mechs, they have no options. It's almost like the clan gets to build their own quirks just by spending a few tons on a targeting computer.
Just with the pinpoint weapons, though, really, I don't feel like targeting computers never added a huge amount for lasers. I thought like a little bit, yeah, but it wasn't like bank breaking because obviously then clans would have dominated back before we had this whole Pop Tart and Documentary Kodiak come along. So, I mean, it's hard to say because if you nerf the targeting computer too much, then they become absolutely useless again. You know?
Well, is the targeting computer the problem, like the complete problem? That's another thought. Is it the only problem, or is it a kind of a mix of multiple issues? Sorry to interrupt you there. But...
I mean, bring on the PPC nerfs again, I guess. I don't
please
know.
No. Well, you're
I
right.
think we all
though.
agree we like that, though. We like the PPC
Yeah, we like the
meta.
It's more
We like
exciting
shooting
play.
PPCs, right? But when they increase the speed again, and they start, slowly but surely, they kept adding a little more speed to the PPCs, and then people are like, hey, we can actually, do damage, and then it's not on the tournament server, but on the general servers now you have lights that have bigger faces, so that makes the PPCs easier to hit them too.
Yeah.
And that's taken away some of those big threats that assaults were used to dealing with.
Yeah, nobody likes a shotgun generator directly behind them.
I don't think we're gonna have to worry about that one for much longer, honestly.
Yeah.
Anybody who's still in the tournament for the next coming months, sure, but after that, I don't think it's gonna be a big deal. How do we feel about the Oxide being nerfed as hard as it was? Was it deserved, undeserved, a little too much?
In terms of quirks, or in terms of having a gigantic head?
Well, a little of both.
It all comes together.
I played an Oxide once and I hated it.
I will say
I
that
agree.
all 35 tonners, I feel very sorry for them. When the rescale first came out, I actually confused a Jenner for a Cicada twice. And then I realized, wait, that's actually a Jenner. That does not look like a Cicada. It has relatively big arms compared to the Cicada, so that's a Jenner.
Another
But
thing
it's
too.
at a distance. It's
An honest
huge.
mistake.
Well,
The humanoids really got hurt the most, I think. Those, like a fire starter is the size of a medium now.
They're-
well,
I mean, the
if you look at
Cheetahs
the
are still
catapult,
doing pretty good.
you look at the catapult and the
She
fire
just
starter.
didn't touch.
Yeah, I mean, but like you were saying about humanoid mechs, the fire starter standing next to a catapult, they're almost the same height. I mean, obviously the catapult has mass width-wise, but like a light, a 35 to a 65, height-wise, you'd think they'd at least be. And I mean, I know it's a case-by-case basis, and we saw a lot of shrinkage in the catapult, but still, like that fire starter is huge.
Mm-hmm.
To be fair, I was a fan of a lot of the rescale. There were a few mechs I think that stood out, and I think they did a good job with it, but they need to, those individual outliers, like the Jenner, for example, they need to just manually say, this is ridiculous, we need to tone it back. I think that would probably be like a happy medium in between the two. Because for the most part, they did a good job. The Catapult's a lot better, the Nova's a lot better now, just as glaring examples. But, I wasn't totally disappointed with that. I actually thought that, I liked it. Then again, I'm not a light pilot, so it personally really didn't affect me all that much. So... But
made your life slightly easier.
Yeah, pretty much.
My personal feeling on the rescale itself, especially since it was essentially a sweeping change, I wasn't, obviously some of my favorite mechs got hit and are almost unusable now, and that's a bummer. But it just means the meta is going to shift a bit. Maybe lights are a little bit less favored. Were lights really, really kind of powerful before? I don't know. That'd be more of a magician question, I guess. But I guess Arctic Cheetah is going to shine again. It didn't really get touched at all since it's a 30-tonner. We saw it as a very strong mech before, and I'm sure we're going to see a lot of it again now because fire starters are essentially going to be useless, and 2Cs and oxides and stuff got all hit really hard. It just means we're going to see different mechs now, and it's just going to be different, I guess. I'm not too worried about it as long as they then balance the mechs based on their new sizes. So Firestarter needs like 20% heat reduction. I don't know.
Speed.
Maybe put some side
Speed.
torso structure first.
Agility.
Yeah,
But I don't know what lights do you think we're gonna see like in MRBC and stuff next season if they don't make any big changes? Is
Cheetahs.
it gonna be lots of cheetahs?
Cheetahs.
It could have been locusts, but they just took a big hit too. So
Well,
I didn't
you're gonna have
understand
those. You're gonna have those brave entrepreneuring individuals who are gonna bring a locust and do really well with the locust. That's a fact. There will be that one locust pilot.
I
or
do
several.
I do remember an SJR game with the Locust. We're gonna see Mark II there.
Yeah, we took. Oh, it's because we need the extra ECM mech or something like that.
Yep.
So we brought the yeah.
nice.
I don't know for upcoming seasons. I mean, it's with the sizes of the lights. Yeah, I mean the cheetah is an obvious choice, but the Jenner 2C still has the best shooting with the arms, and I don't just really good mobility in general. It's still pretty strong with ER mediums. Wolfhound is a pretty durable mech still, even though it's a little bit bigger. It's still very strong. I think the Oxide is still fine if you're gonna brawl. I mean, is there really anything still better than the Oxide for straight up brawl? Maybe the Jenner 2C, but yeah, it's not. Yeah, like you guys saying, it's a little bit bigger and maybe it's too easy to hit now. So
I think a lot of it depends on the map.
Yeah, because we saw a fall off in the Oxide on Canyon Network, even though it's still pretty good. I mean, mobility.
Jump
Something about
jets.
the jitter. Jump
Just
jets.
too good.
Just way
what
too
are
good to be.
Panthers like now? Because yeah,
Well, let's ask Tolson.
DPCs.
yeah.
Yes, we should. But yeah.
I have no idea. I've been on the tournament server just like you guys so much that it's scary that I don't have really a good solid grasp outside of just pug play what the meta is, and that's why I'm desperate for MRBC to tell me what's good or not, because I can't science it on my own very well in pug play.
Yeah.
I rely on SJR and EMP to tell me what's good.
What is good?
G-Man, please.
So how about that
It
Viper?
will be interesting. It just like a last point. It will be interesting on like drop 1 MRBC, 4 lights, 4 mediums. It was always mediums all died first, and then all the lights died. But with bigger lights and stuff, especially being forced to take multiple types, maybe we're going to see a little bit different gameplay coming out of drop 1, I guess, than what we're used to. It's exciting I can't wait to see it.
Week one's always entertaining,
Agree.
but I think it's going to be really entertaining this time around.
Yeah, so much has changed, and it's been so long since last season. But
Yeah.
go on.
Viper.
How about that Viper?
How about that Viper? It can fly to the moon. I mean, let's start with the plus points. It can fly to the moon. It's got that going for it.
Battle Cat pre-nerf.
Yeah, I mean,
That was
a
my
little bit.
favorite thing in the world back in the day. I'm not gonna lie. Then they nerfed.
I mean, it doesn't have the mask, but I mean, it suffers from cicada syndrome. I feel like it's an exalted light. That's my perception. Then again, I'm in the 80 to 100 ton range, so I'm shooting at them. I'm not piloting them. I don't own them. So, anybody in here own them?
Yep.
It would be you.
Yeah, it would be me. I was like, oh, it's a clan cicada. Oh, I have to buy this thing. I love the cicada. It's arms. Very, very papery, but it feels very similar to the cheetah in that regards. If you lose the arms, it sucks. You lose a decent amount of firepower on some of the variants, the ones that are arm mounted. I think the A has 4 in the CT. So an interesting build has been the large pulse 3 mediums. It's a bit warm, but it's fast. It's really fast, and it hits hard. And while, yeah, it's a glorified light, it is also a gloriously glorified light, in pug play at least. The 8.5 to 9 tons of free pod space is a little bit disappointing, but it can almost get there. Just because, I give it a 10 out of 10 because it can almost get to Stargate. Just so much fun.
From a dead stop, right?
I think you might see them next MRBC season, because if teams do like cap strats or something like that, like it's a clan cicada, right? So it's better in that role
even
than the
potent.
cicada would be. And you did see a couple cicadas actually. If they were going for that cap strat, it was rare to see that because I think most teams just would rather just beat each
Is
other
it
to
as
death with
fast as a
sticks.
cicada?
Well, most time you take the ice ferret, right? So
Well, yeah, that too.
so now though with one of the things was if you took 2 of those and you couldn't take 2 of something else that you wanted, but now you can take an ice ferret and a viper.
Yep.
And have those go around and be doing their cap strat. So that could happen, especially on a map like Frozen City that's so much bigger. Yeah. We'll see about the rework of of Mordor and find out if that one's going to be something like that too. But yeah,
That's exciting. We might actually end up voting for Mordor.
Yeah.
In reference to that, actually,
In terms of the Viper, for me, I don't own them, but in terms of shooting at them, I feel if I'm like going center mass and stuff like that, the really slippery ones, it just seems like it has decent hitboxes, and I might be wrong. Maybe I'm just a terrible shot, but
no, I agree with you. Totally.
they seem to have really good hitboxes. The only thing that I've been successfully able to do to consistently kill them is go for the legs, and of course they're skinny legs, but it seems to be their weak point, I guess. Because anytime I go straight up CT on them, I feel like I'm shooting repeatedly and not getting results for it. They're spreading really well.
Oh, it sounds like we got a pretty solid consensus. It's more of like a, not good, not bad, Viper.
handle with care.
I mean, I think really the reason why it doesn't seem to, or it seems to be on the more lackluster side, is just consider what we talked about earlier, what exactly we're playing against on the battlefield now. Lots of pinpoint front-loaded damage, lots of everything skewed towards the heavier tonnage and can shoot you. So if just one unlucky shot, then, well, you're pretty much gimped. But otherwise, I'd say it's in a decent place.
That
Could
is
use
the
a
bad thing about
tiny bit of help.
pinpoint play is
Maybe.
it does encourage heavier tonnages, whereas I feel like the SRMs and Daka metas, like you could get away with doing a little less. But so that is one downside to it.
Yeah, there's a lot of finality to hits. It hits and it takes a side torso. It is what it is.
So
But it's nice to see. Just quick point. Over the last 3 to 4 months, the changes we've seen have been, I think, at least for me, refreshing in the fact that we've seen a shift. There's more breath, there's more life in the change of the game. Obviously with the World Championship client, it's static, right? But I'm talking about the primary client. We're seeing more breath and breathing room. We saw Docker make a resurgence, like Bandit said. We saw the resurgence of SERMs, and now we're seeing this pinpoint damage. And so instead of just like, what did we have, like 4 or 5 months of just solid lasers? So something that's good. I like that. Now, things may go a little bit to the extreme in one way or another, but that change, that gentle breathing, that's good. That's nice.
Adapt or die.
Exactly. And it highlights the people that are are able to, like you said, adapt or die. It made me happy. Put a smile on my face. In reference to the tournament client, how, like, perceptions, what do we think of the World Championship? I mean, there was big hubbub, big freak out. Everybody had an opinion. But now the chips have fallen and we're getting closer to the end now. We've been in it for a while. We've seen a surprisingly, well, actually, I guess I shouldn't say surprisingly. We've seen a large culling rate in units. And competition-wise, is it getting static? Do we feel like it's stale? Or like what are the good points that we've seen of it? What have we really enjoyed about the World Championship so far? And what have we kind of been, what didn't quite suit our fancy?
Well, this whole thing so far has been nothing but a giant qualifier. So from the start of it to the end of it, it's technically still the same thing. So it's hard to say like anything's changed necessarily. I think we knew from the beginning that there was going to be a lot of teams dropping out because as teams get mathematically disqualified, if there's no incentive to those teams to stay, like some reward for making it to the end or some reward for not forfeiting matches or something like that, if there's no incentive, then why waste your time? There's other things you can do. Some teams are sticking it out, and I give those teams a lot of props where they just want the competition. They want to play against these teams. They want to see where they stack up, and that's awesome. It would be foolish to think that all teams would do that, though. And so seeing as many teams drop out as they have, not really a surprise to me at all. So I don't think that's necessarily indicative of how the tournament was designed. It's because we've been playing for months now, so obviously teams are going to start essentially working their way out of the system and stuff. So it has been a hell of a grind. I know we're over 80% through all of the matches. A lot of it has to do with DQs and withdrawals, and a lot of teams rescheduling ahead of time. And so there's some teams that have weeks without a match now. Just they've front-loaded everything and stuff, so they have a very easy schedule going forward. I tell you what, though, I cannot wait for the regional finals. In my opinion, the regional finals is going to be significantly more interesting than anything we've seen so far. And I think, personally, it's going to be more interesting than the grand finals, because taking the top 5 of teams that have proven themselves against each other and against their peers, and then making them play in a bracket against each other, that's going to be some like MWOWC style divisional awesomeness that we've been just desperate for the last couple months here. And then, of course, seeing how NA stacks up against EU is certainly going to be interesting. But we don't even know where they stand necessarily. I mean, everybody's got a theory. EU thinks they're going to be on top. NA thinks they're going to be on top, obviously. So I can't wait to see how that happens. But we don't have anything to go off of, really. Like, these teams don't play each other on a daily basis. So, is Eon going to beat SGR? I don't know. Is Eon going to beat EMP? I don't know. Is, RGF going to win against those teams? Who knows? It all comes down to that day. How are they playing on that day? But at least we've seen NA playing NA so much that we know how awesome the regional finals is going to be, and I just can't wait to watch it. And I can't wait to cast it either.
Oh, yeah. It's going to be a dirty slugfest, and it's going to be so fun to watch.
If the SGR versus Lords match had any indication, I can't wait to see more of that for sure. It's just going to be great. Congrats on your win, by the way.
Thanks. Yeah, this has been a crazy... It's crazy. I mean, it's tough, okay? I mean, there's no other way to say it, I guess. It's tough. I mean, there's burnout all over the board amongst a lot of players. Usually a league, we're doing it for like 8 weeks, maybe 10 weeks, and then we're done. And we have one match. Now we're doing you have like a best of 5 or best of 3, whatever it is a match. And now you're doing like one drop here, one drop there. So you got to be ready all the time. Strats are much more apparent and visible to everybody because of the casting, which we haven't always had. So you're always looking at, okay, what do we have to do to improve? Or, hey, they saw our last match, so they're going to set up to fight this, so should we throw something a little bit different at them? I think the biggest issue, I mean, the dropout is obviously, you'd rather not have it. But the biggest issue, I think, is it's just going on forever to get through the regionals.
Yeah. I mean, we have, what, 2 more months of this now?
Yeah, 2 more months.
Oof.
And my biggest concern, honestly, I mean, how are dropouts going to affect the final standings?
And that is definitely a concern. One thing that people have brought up is, let's say there's an upset. Well, now certain teams have an incentive to convince that team to stay in because that upset stands, but then the other team wants them to withdraw because then it gets reverted to a win for them. And so, like, as teams drop out, it actually is making teams move up and down because of that. And it's not exactly as prevalent of some of the other situations. Oops. As some of the other situations, it is still a concern for sure. And you'd rather have a system in place where there's no incentive to withdraw, or where, when in MRBC, if we have somebody withdrawing, it's a shock because it doesn't happen all that often. In this one, you're sitting there at like 40% of the teams withdrawing, and it's just another day. It's crazy. So
Just kind of tapping your wrist and waiting for it.
yeah, and you have to then build a system around the possibility of having 40% withdrawals. And I think, if anything, this is going to be a massive learning experience for PGI if they do this again. And I hope they do it again, and I hope they learn from this. The last thing I want to see happen is because there was a lot of anger, a lot of vitriol, and a lot of criticism coming from everybody about this tournament, and it has been tough for sure. The tournament setup and things like that. My concern is that if everyone acts like a bunch of dicks about it, PGI is not going to want to do it again, and then we've just lost out on that ability to have that exposure and stuff like that. And I hope it doesn't come to that. I hope they give it another shot. I hope they take a lot of what they've learned from this, and I hope they come up with a better product next year. Definitely.
I mean, that said, it's only the regional, right? So, or the qualifier. Sorry.
Yeah, and that's absolutely it's the qualifier, and that's why I'm saying we're going to get to the regionals, and a lot of us are going to forget that the qualifiers even happen, because it is going to be good. It's going to be very difficult for their, I guess, for it to not be good.
Well, the real tournament's barely even begun.
Exactly, and that's why I've always thought that having a much shorter qualifier and a little bit longer regional finals would have been fantastic. The nice thing about a round robin with everybody is you get a true picture, top to bottom, essentially, of where these teams stand against each other. But because it's 82 teams in NA, then you got to throw in all these burnout factors, which can give you a negative picture or an inaccurate picture. Because like AS just withdrew from the tournament and dissolved as a team. AS, I would say, is a Division A team, but now they're in last place because they just withdrew. We now no longer have a picture of, skill set top to bottom. So having more, maybe either group-based round robin, Swiss pairing, anything else to have a much shorter, less matches played qualifier to give you a general picture top to bottom. Take a decent chunk of what you got at the top and allow them to duke it out in some sort of bracket or something like that to get to the grand finals, I think would have been fantastic. It's just too front-loaded, 4 months just to get an accurate picture. You could have done 2 months to get a general picture and then done a longer regional finals, and I think it would have been just as good, if not better.
Oh, yeah. I think it would have been, like you said, with the regional qualifiers being longer, I think that it would have piqued more interest, because, talking about interest, exposure, too.
Mm-hmm.
82 teams. What community-run league has managed to be able to, just by nature, has been able to manage that? MRBC is a huge league. It offers a lot. But just their ability to pull that many teams in A, that was cool. And that was exciting.
Exposure helps a lot with that.
Oh,
being on the front page of their own website definitely helps with that a little bit.
And you can't deny that in the launcher and whatever else. But it's just exciting because you saw a lot more, because with a lot of community-run leagues, you see a lot of the same names. You see some other people and some newer names. People want to get in. They want to try it out. But this was a little bit more, in some ways, it was more friendly for more units, more groups to just try and, hey, let's try this out. And there can never be enough competitive teams.
They also had an incentive to play. Let's not lie. When we're playing for money,
yeah,
you do bring certain people out of the woodwork.
True.
But still, like I said, that is a very big plus for this tournament. And I just wanted to make that point because I think it's important. And like you said, I want to see another one.
Yeah.
It could be different, but I really do want to see that.
I know my team, especially playing without their 2-drop commanders, they still decided to play anyways, essentially knowing that there's no way they would ever get to the top 5. Let's just be fair. Like, it's not going to happen. Even with me, it's not going to happen. But they played because they enjoy competition and they enjoy being in those settings and enjoy structured play, and that's And personally, if I didn't have competitive play for MWO, I probably would not still be playing it. It just wouldn't be interesting to me. I'm a competitive person. I like comp play. And so we've seen new teams come out of the woodwork. The first name that comes to mind, Narc the Sun. They've been a pleasure to watch. I would say they're probably Div D, Div E level, but they're fun to watch. They're consistent, and I can't wait to see them try out MRBC next season if they decide to play it. And I've seen a lot of teams that did not exist before or did not even know that Comp MWO existed, who now know that there is third-party leagues out there and are going to try it now. So we've got a balance of teams burning out with people quitting, that sucks. But then you've also got all these people that never knew that MRBC existed, and now they're going to try it, and I can't wait to get started with that because we've got this fresh blood on the field essentially, and we're adopting them into the competitive culture.
Looking forward to the upcoming MRBC season. Ooh, it's gonna be fun.
We'll see what comes in. Huh?
I mean, do we want to touch on that a little bit?
Why not?
Sure.
So, I mean, I've touched on it a bit, but we are moving forward. The season is going to happen. Our goal for the while now is that we were going to wait until the regional qualifiers were over because that's when most of the teams are going to be done. I've been pushing to start it a little bit earlier since a lot of teams are already done or have a much more lightened schedule, but two of the admins, of course, are still fighting for their top 5 positions, so I guess it wouldn't be very fair to drag their teams and stuff through that right now. So the goal was October after the scheduled regional qualifiers is done. I think we were going to start signups maybe September 1st or something like that. We could open it up a little bit sooner just to get the word out there and stuff like that. Right now we are in our rule set discussion phase. My goal is to completely rewrite the entire rule set to make it much easier to read now. There was definitely a huge wall of text last time. There's still a lot to say. My goal is to try and get it to be a little bit more lawyerish, I guess, where you can find exactly what you're looking for at a glance instead of having to dig through the 15 different sections it might possibly reference that one rule in, kind of thing. So it's a lot of work to do that, of course. But once it's done, we're going to be sending that rules. Obviously, everybody's going to be able to see the rules before they sign up. That's the goal, is to have everything set in stone before signups open up. But we're going to run it past a lot of the people who have been very vocal, even rules lawyerish, to see if they can penetrate it. We're going to do some penetration testing on the rules. I want to see if they can find something that we couldn't think of before. And it happens every season, and it gets less and less as we learn. But I want to see if there's something that we can't see where it's going to be exploited, and then fix it right away instead of waiting until week 5 to do it. And so we really rely on the community to help us with that, because we can sit there and think we know what the hell's going on ourselves, but as soon as you actually get in there and start shooting at each other, that's where those things come out of the woodwork, So we really are putting a big emphasis on the community for helping us out with this, taking community feedback. Obviously, this is our league, but this is your league too, and we want to make it fun for everybody. And everybody's going to have different opinions, and we can't please everyone, but really want to just come up with the best thing that we possibly can to maybe even break another record for team signups and stuff. Just want to keep trudging forward and growing and stuff like that. So yeah, coming soon, MRBC Season 8. Can't wait.
I have 2 things to say to that. First one is, I think you'd make a particular individual here incredibly happy if you added a Highlander rule. Just anything with a Highlander. And number 2, about that. So something we've heard a little bit of talk about is is it possible maybe to speak with PGI about allowing use of the tourney client for community-run leagues?
That's I mean, we could definitely ask them. I can almost guarantee you what their answer is going to be, though. The biggest thing is flagging people's accounts to use the tournament client is not as easy, I guess, as you'd think it would be. So they would have to flag every single person that's on any roster ever, and that could be they might just not want to allocate the time to do that. Also, the fact that they had the tournament client for their tournament. Well, essentially, for comp players, not having incentive to grind out certain mechs and stuff like that could be harmful, I guess, to that cash flow. Like, why bother buying Kodiaks if you could just play on the tournament server and then just have all mechs and stuff like that? So it's something we can definitely run past them. But if they say no, I don't think I would be too torn up about it, because it just kind of makes sense that they wouldn't
I could
want
understand why they wouldn't want to
that
do
makes
that.
sense.
Yeah,
I just thought it might be an interesting olive branch, but I can totally. I'm not going to blame them if they don't.
The olive branch, to me, is the support that we got from their rewards and stuff for the winners and stuff. They have a new system set up now for third-party stuff where it's a lot easier to get MC codes and stuff to give out for prizes. We don't have to bother them as much to get this stuff, and they've been very helpful with that, and we do appreciate it because it adds that extra incentive to play well. And it's a lot easier to award the prizes, because the one season before, for the winners, they all got to pick a mech and stuff, and that was a giant pain in the butt because it all had to be injected. They had to pick a mech, and it just took forever. But just getting an email with a bajillion codes in it and just giving the codes to the team captain and saying, go award your team, makes it so much simpler on us, so much simpler on everybody, and then it's on the team captain to not run to Mexico with their MC, I guess. But and so we're gonna make sure that that's clear in the rules too. Is now, when we wrote the rules last season, we didn't know what the prizes was gonna be like. We thought they were gonna do injections again, so we had all kinds of rules in there about you can only win one prize and stuff like that to make it easier on PGI, make it easier on us. But now that we can essentially do what PGI just did with the tournament for their money payout, we'll just give it to the team captain, let them sort it out, and they'll determine their own player eligibility. That takes a load off of our shoulders for sure. But they have been very supportive in that regards, and that, like I said, I wouldn't be too shocked if they don't allow us to use the tournament server for that. I don't even know if the tournament server is going to be around much longer after even after regional finals. I don't know how all that's going to play out.
I imagine they also have to pay quite a bit to have the infrastructure up behind that too.
I'm sure, absolutely. But another thing that we were considering doing for MWOWC this season too is to make it more fair, potentially removing all MC mechs from the roster. Before, we allowed hero mechs, and so for the most of us, it's like, yeah, I got oxides, whatever. That's cool. But it's very tough to justify, we can allow hero mechs, but we can't allow mechs that were just recently released but not available for C-bills yet, like the Warhammer. And of course, midway through the season, suddenly the Warhammer became available, and it suddenly got released. So two of the changes that we're considering making, and we are open to feedback from the community for this, of course, no MC or pay mechs whatsoever for the entire duration of the season, just C-bill only mechs, and not doing any sort of mid-season additions like the Warhammer happened. Black Widows suddenly showed up and made a big splash. Potentially just saying anything that's available at the beginning of the season, that's what you get for the entire season, and then next season you can get the extra stuff. So it's kind of a sweeping change, but it's 100% fair now.
Well, what about hero omnipods, for example?
That's actually going to be a thing.
That's gonna be a tough one to regulate. And we'll have to think about how we would possibly be able to do that. For one thing, how much of an impact does it make? Is it easy to identify if a mech's doing that to the point where you could report them for doing that? I mean, maybe a hero omnipod, like 3 lasers in the shoulder is going to be bloody obvious. Well, then you can report it or something like that. But I guess we would need to see what we're dealing with, really.
Yeah.
And at the same token, what's going to be coming out in the future.
I totally support a move away from oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I totally support a move away from MC Max, but I feel like if you run into a sticky situation with the Viper, for example, that could get really hairy really fast and be almost impossible to really regulate. That would be my only real concern.
I'd like to see some, I guess, examples, especially since I don't own Vipers. I don't know what the hero Omnipod's going to lend to it. I just don't have experience in that. And we're sitting here writing rules and we don't know that stuff. That's where we rely on you guys to be like, hey, wait, what about this? Here's an example, and we'll have to be like, oh shit, like what did that just do? Obviously the flip side would just be to make all mechs eligible right away. That comes with its own complications, especially since there's then a paywall, so
especially with the paywalls.
No, definitely
not.
Yeah,
especially with the splash the Kodiak made, we saw that it could definitely be. And the other thing about the hero Omnipod that I would have to add was just the fact that it may not be relevant with the Viper, but then it could pop up in the middle with a new release and suddenly be an issue, and nobody wants to go back and fix a rule. Nobody likes doing that.
No, and we can't do that at all. We can't go back and rewrite a rule mid-season. I mean, we would get our asses handed to us, and some people accuse us of doing that when in fact it was just interpretation. Like, this is our interpretation, this has always been our interpretation, you're just hearing about it now, kind of thing. And people were still pissed about that. So we need to make it very clear from the start, this is what's expected. And then we gotta just, I guess, if the hero omnipods are gonna be a problem, we'll have to find a way to identify it. God, I wish we had API. That would solve all of these problems. Yeah. And then I'm watching like MWA going on right now, and I'm seeing the tickets coming in the background because I'm an admin, and there's constantly people saying, "Oh, I forgot to take a screenshot. I forgot to do this." And the whole thing with MWA is it's stat tracking, and then you get a player card, and it's like, this is your average damage, this is how many components you've destroyed, and all this cool stuff. But if you forget a screenshot, you've just ruined potentially a couple of matches there. An API would fix all that, because then all the data could be extracted, and that's what I want so much. It would fix it because it could say exactly what you got equipped on your Mac, exactly what you did with it, how you died, how many times you've been headshot, how many times you get center cord, and you can analyze that as a pilot to fix whatever problem you keep having. It's just, there's so much there. The hard part is convincing them that there's a benefit to it. And the only people that are going to use an API to its fullest extent are probably the comp teams and the comp scene. And so as the comp scene grows, maybe that priority is going to change. But the only way the comp scene is going to grow is to continue just hitting it and having fun doing it too.
And a little bit of accessibility. Yeah.
And hopefully the shoutcasting and stuff helps with the exposure for that too. We've been hitting that hard. This is, we've done 2 seasons of it, and then of course this tournament as well.
You guys have been doing a good job, honestly. I gotta say, top notch. And
a really good job.
Yeah. Shout out to everybody involved.
I'm still an amateur.
The referees. Like, wow. The referee support for this tournament has been phenomenal.
And I mean, shoutcasting like that, you're putting aside 3 nights a week of your time. Potentially, yeah. We saw a little bit of that with rescheduling, but
that's
just to point that out to people, hey, that's. I mean, we're not talking about somebody that's 18 years old, that's on their summer break, it's got time coming out of their ears, like these people have got lives. And I mean, mech warrior community is generally a little bit more mature generally, but that's a lot of time. And that's another thing too, is with these competitive events, it's always time. It's your biggest resource. It's how much you dedicate behind the game during, the game's 15 minutes maybe. It's the 6 hours of preparation, the community league, what they put into it, And so just bear in mind, I mean, I'm just going to say, bear in mind, there's a lot of time put into this. It's not like they're just like, okay, here's the rules, move on. Or, you know, here it is, done. There's the backfield is so much bigger. So when people are asking for features, they're asking for these and this and that, there is a significant effort put into that. And that's my rant, anyway.
My big thing for the shoutcasting is I've always done it for the community. Even with this tournament, it's 100% for the community. I'm not doing it for the money. I'm not doing it for PGI. I'm doing it for you guys, and that's always been 100% my goal, and that's my focus, is to make it entertaining for you guys. I see the benefit of growing the comp scene because it's better for you guys. And if it wasn't for you guys, and everybody's been incredibly supportive. Like, I feel like a damn celebrity when I play this game. Every single drop I go in, people are like, "I Bandit, Bandit, I like your cast and stuff." I'm like, this is incredible. Like, I wouldn't get this in any other game. But if it wasn't for you guys, I wouldn't do it. And I couldn't do this in any other game, to be perfectly honest. If I go play, I play Counter-Strike, but if I tried to start shoutcasting for Counter-Strike, nobody's gonna freaking watch me. I don't even know why the hell you guys watch me. What's wrong with you? But and then of course the support of my lovely wife is the only other reason I can get away with doing all this. She's ignoring me again. Whatever. I'm trying to win points here, and she's watching Overwatch videos.
It's the beard. That's why we watch you.
Still sub Bombadil though. Still sub Bombadil.
Well, I don't really know if it's possible to beat Bombadil. I don't know if it's physically possible.
That's some
He's got
beard.
a glorious beard.
But yeah, I'm gonna keep doing this as long as you guys are interested in me and what I have to say, and as long as comp exists in this game, I don't see myself going anywhere else. For sure.
Right on. So, segueing back a little bit to the MechWarrior Championship and our Canyon Network focus. We got one map, Canyon Network. Woo! Gameplay dynamics. Has the tournament, obviously we do have a varying level of skill between teams, so we are seeing some games that are very close. More significantly, we're seeing a difference of skill, so we're seeing some different strategies. That's another thing with having so many new people coming in, we're seeing different strategies, because there's a lot of things that we know work, don't work, and some things
Zeus
nobody
is
has any
loose.
idea. Exactly. The Zeus is fucking loose. But
I still have to eat my hat.
I sent you a link for a guacamole hat. I sent you a link.
I'm gonna do that.
What do we think of the dynamics of what we've seen? Like, we touched on it. Well, we did more than touch on it, but we talked about the Kodiak and what it brought to the table. These anchoring points, this triple threat, this terrifying threat on positions. Has we seen any evolution of different gameplay, team movements, etc., so forth, from the focus? Because in all honesty, playing so many games on a map, you're going to get more familiar with it, especially when you're analyzing it from in a competitive sense. Maybe I'm just talking on my ass here, but I feel like
I've seen an evolution personally. Now, my biggest issue is I didn't have the opportunity of seeing a lot of the higher tier teams from the very beginning. Magician might be able to answer better, but I'm not sure if the heavy PPC Goss meta was there from the very start, or if that's something that maybe was developed as an answer to the Kodiak after the tournament started. I feel like I started seeing it later, but it could have been just I didn't get a chance to see any of the top tier teams until halfway through, essentially. I guess you'd have to answer that.
I was actually kind of laughing because I think it was like some of the initial casting. You're a little bit surprised. You're like, "There's PPC Gauss Kodiaks and stuff," and I'm like, "Where has Bandit been?"
Yeah,
but I know because you're not playing. You're not necessarily preparing for the tournament, so you're not really in that same sphere of mindset of being like, "Hey, what's the best
I learned
to take?" So
from my casts. That's the thing is I don't necessarily come in knowing what the current meta is and then I watch what happens, and now I start to see trends in the matches, and that's where I actually pick up on a lot of this stuff. I am not a trendsetter when it comes to meta. I'm not a developer. That's you guys that do that.
Sure.
I pick it up and I use it for my own team, of course, but we're always one step behind. But as a caster, I'm watching what's being used, and I'll say the very first time I see it, that's interesting. Well, I guess I could see why they would do that. And then I see it get used, and I see it used incredibly successfully, and it's like, holy shit, that worked really good, and now we're seeing it all the time. Well, now we know why. And I've even seen some teams seeing each other's strats and then starting to use those as well, as especially with the casting, the coverage. The other teams pick up on it. Of course, they're one step behind, but then they start using it with success as well.
Yeah, so we are seeing some diversity. Lights, you're seeing various options from teams. Even at the high level, you're seeing from cheetahs, the Jenner 2C, small pulse, or medium lasers, or the splat Jenner. Those are the main ones, but at heavies is where you're seeing a lot of diversity. Timberwolf, the Warhammer 6R, Warhammer Black Widow, the Grasshopper. Here's everything else. I also seen the large pulse medium laser Grasshopper versus just the ER large one. So I mean, there is some evolution. I would say some of the mechs have changed over time. I think teams are constantly trying to figure out what's best. Now, Team 1 versus Team 2 is the other thing. Team 2, is generally playing a more like it can sit back and hold the ground type strat because it pretty much spawns where it wants to end up. Whereas Team 1, spawns basically in a corner and has to fight its way out. So that side, I think, has seen probably some of the most evolution of just trying to figure out what's best to do there.
Yeah, that makes sense for sure. It's been tough to pick up on trends and stuff, though, with seeing so many blowouts and stuff. That's the hardest part about this, is trying to make blowouts look interesting or sound interesting. But it's the name of the game because of the way round robin works. Is you got a divisional league like MRBC where all of the fights are expected to be like 3-2 decisions, and then you've got this where you've got Marine mechs versus EMP. Well, like nobody's surprised there, kind of thing. But it is exciting watching you guys and seeing what you're coming up with. And it seems like a lot of the higher tier teams are starting to do kind of the same things. Of course, Lord's coming out with the heavy DACA hold W to win strat against you guys, and it almost worked. Almost worked. I think that was a little bit of a surprise to me. I expected it to be a poke battle. We've been seeing so many PPC Goss poke battles that they come out with something like that with pretty good success. Of course, they stalled out a little bit, and I think that gave you guys the opportunity to come up around the backside, and you were pop-tarting incredibly well. But that was a surprise. I mean, we know those mechs are good, but we haven't been seeing them used consistently in high-tier play. It's been mostly PPC.
Actually, in our game versus Lords, they actually did an all-out brawl push on us. So I actually say it's not every single team, but I think the teams that deviate from it are pretty much known for that sort of play. Like Lords, they love to play aggressive, right?
Yeah.
So
maybe they were using you as practice.
it's true.
Maybe.
Or maybe
Perhaps.
they thought they were exploiting
Maybe.
something in our play. I don't know, but
Yeah, it's hard to say for sure.
There's an interesting amount of metagaming going on between teams, especially once you get the whole VODs and, oh, this is their strat, oh, that's their strat, maybe they'll do this,
Yeah.
maybe they'll change it up, like Magician pointed out earlier. One thing I did want to ask, though, so usually when we had the other community-run leagues, which are, not on the tourney client, we've had sort of a trend of a bubble meta forming here, because it's literally just Canyon, literally just Conquest, over and over and over. Have you guys, just as players, seen anything kind of trickle in to regular Canyon play?
Like in live client?
Yeah.
It's hard to say. We don't have a season to watch yet. Like
I mean,
in
fair
Pug
enough.
Match, maybe. I mean, it's
Yeah,
the
in Pug Match.
weirdest thing is it's hard to practice for the tourney client when you're on the live client because they're no longer synchronized. So even the velocities are different, the mechs are different and stuff like that. So you do your best, but Pug matches in general, it's so difficult to practice. So maybe scrimmages and stuff, but usually scrimmages will happen on the tourney client as well. But I don't know. I don't know if I do anything after watching people play a whole bunch necessarily. I got a Kodiak and I shred face with it like everybody else, but that's not a surprise. Hit the button, shit dies.
I think the biggest change is definitely the lights. Like the lights got hit, maybe not hard, like nerfed hard, but they got changed so radically. Like
yeah,
from the turning client to the standard client that I feel bad for the light pilots on the top teams because they are going through some serious schizophrenia when it comes to practicing on the regular client and the turning client. So
yeah. You know, one of the weirdest things that I noticed is the discrepancy between strats that are used for EU and NA. Like, the Spider 5K is a staple in EU play. Like, almost every single match has 2 of them. And in NA, almost every single match has 2 Gen 2Cs or 2C and an Oxide or something like that. And I don't know if it's maybe just the different style of weapon is more friendly to perhaps latency issues or something like that, or because I know that there's been issues with VPN usage in EU quite a bit, so maybe this is an answer to that. I'm not sure. I don't follow it that closely, but it's crazy to see when I cast EU matches. Sure, they still bring Kodiaks. We do see a hell of a lot more like executioner use though, which is crazy, but it's so different from NA, and I can't wait to see what happens when those guys come together, and if that makes, especially on LAN, that's going to be a huge thing too. I really hope that they have like a LAN server and don't force you to play with like 100 ping together or something. I don't know. At least it's fair.
I'm honestly a fan of the Spider. I'll say that right now.
It is a good map.
I really do like that map. Especially that's the 5K with the large pulse and the machine guns, right?
Yeah, the 4 machine guns and the large pulse. Yep. Yeah, it's a crit seeker. You open someone up and suddenly you've got 5 kills and 200 damage. You know, like it's low damage, but everything dies. It's the weirdest damn thing, but it works so effectively, and just EU has adopted it hard, it seems. And then Magician, you work with EU guys a lot, right? Is there a reason for that, or is it just what they do?
I don't know. Like why EU tends to like certain builds more than NA. It used to be the servers, like they were always playing on NA servers, but yeah, it's just they kind of developed their own styles. We'll just have to see. I'm curious. We're gonna try to scrim some of those EU teams just because it's harder as you go forward. I mean, you have less teams to play, and like AS is a regular partner of ours, but they're out now, so we don't have them to scrim against. So, now that we've played 228th Lords, we can scrim them. Yeah, and that's part of the problem, right? You don't really want to scrim your people you're going to be playing soon. Like we play SRS or the SRS SJR team a few times, but now we got them coming up. And then once we get towards regionals, it's going to be really hard too, because you're going to be like, well, who are we going to scrim? There's 5 teams, and they're not going to want to play,
Yeah.
Yeah. So having those EU teams is probably what we're gonna have to do is just suck it up and play earlier, and maybe we'll find out like how their styles work.
How it stacks up.
I mean, it's playing in MRBCU, there always was a little bit of a difference in play style, but I felt like last season the meta kind of was pretty similar for both sides, and maybe just a few different mechs here and there. But the Spider, I mean, there's not a lot of teams that are taking the Spider because it doesn't. Other than like if it gets its right situation, it's not as strong as just having the small pulse or medium lasers on a light. I do think though that the Spider is hard to hit, and maybe they're just playing a little bit with some of the ping issues there and lag issues, and using that to their advantage, just to sit there and keep poking with that large pulse over and over again and take no damage.
True.
When you play them in the finals, though, they won't be able to rely on that because that's going to be over LAN, though, right? So
well, we have no idea. We have no idea how it's going to work. We don't know. I mean, it's going to be in Vancouver, but their servers aren't in Vancouver. So I doubt they're going to have servers there that we're going to connect at 0 ping, or whoever's there, competing there. I don't think it's going to be a 0 ping. So it's still going to, everyone's going to have the same ping.
I think their servers are close to the East Coast because I have like 20 ping and I live like Northeast. US.
Well, they were servers Toronto in at one point.
Or Toronto, yeah.
I don't know where they. Yeah, I don't know where they're now.
I know that they're very close to me, and I'm in Northeast US. So that's. I don't know. I don't know if that would be bad to Vancouver or not, but even then, if you're only getting 50 ping, that's still a lot better than the EU servers, for example.
Yeah.
I would
As
imagine.
as a reference, I live on the West Coast in Oregon, so about the same distance, and I get about 90. So, I mean,
So
you can
maybe
That's
that will
extrapolate
okay.
if you will.
into,
Your mileage may vary. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I live in Oregon, so
and it really just dependent on the infrastructure they have. They're gonna be doing a big stream out and stuff, and a lot of coverage. It all takes bandwidth. At the same token, they're gonna have 16 computers connected on one internet connection. How is that going to play into it? I really hope they got some good, solid infrastructure at that
Yeah.
conference center, because I've played a Counter-Strike 1.6 tournament on LAN with like 10 meg hubs and it basically running like a 100 ping on LAN. It was not fun at all.
I've had to
So,
experience that too. That was I had to
That's
do
like
that
some
with
college
StarCraft
tournament.
once.
Oh god.
Man,
Yep,
it was
StarCraft.
slideshow. It was slideshow.
It was so bad. So that's gonna be a real wild card, and hopefully they allow you guys to mess around a little bit to see what kind of pings you're working with. But even still, until it's game time, you really don't know the true environment of what you're gonna have to work with. And maybe some builds work better in those situations than others. Maybe everyone's gonna bring streaks. I don't know.
I will say
LRMs.
this.
Here come the LRMs.
I was
At least they let you. At least they're gonna let you use steering wheels. Just saying.
Oh dear God.
got one for speed and one for turning.
Yeah, I mean, the ability to use a steering wheel is a requirement to join SJR, so it is important.
oh,
Hey, I got two back.
Thought it
I
was
got two
two.
back here. I'm working on them right now. I mean, I don't know if I'll ever master them.
Prime candidate Nanners is going to quit D5 and head over to SJR now. He's got steering wheel.
got to finish mastering the steering wheel first, but
Yeah.
he's going to use
So-
this as the stepping stool. But in the meantime,
So one disappointment with this tournament, though, is and it's not Bandit's fault in this, but is a lack of coverage of the EU matches. I know there's somebody running a Twitter account that's kind of posting some results, but it's like little standings there. I mean, there's one game separating like 8 or 9 spots, and they're some good teams, down in the 5th through 7th slots or whatever it is. So I mean, it's
I don't
going
know
to
what
be
the hell
really
I'm going
tough.
to do for AP,
So
man.
close.
I don't. It's like
Move to
3
Oregon.
a.m. for me or something, or 5 a.m.
there's only so much you two can do. It's like
Yeah, I mean,
I'm going to make an effort. I mean, I like I said, I'm committed to you guys, so I'm going to try and find a way maybe on a Saturday to wake up early and do some AP casts or something. But it's
roll out at 2 in the
I just wish I didn't have a career, a career
Okay,
and a
well.
kid.
Well, we'll start the Bandit Espresso Fund. So
Oh jeez.
Yeah.
he's got this.
I will say that was one thing rolling into this tournament when they posted the schedule. I sighed because those are the 3 days I work 12s. And I was just like, I wish
Oh.
I'd known the schedule before I put myself on the roster. Like somebody else could have filled this and actually played.
That was
But,
the
it
biggest
is what it
issue
is.
too, is
Yeah.
having signups and locking them before fully releasing what the tournament's going to be like and stuff. And MRBC side, we definitely learned from that to never do that to people. Come up with a clear rule
Yeah.
set.
if there's
and
one thing I
requirements
hope
before
that they do
you give the
differently
roster.
next year, it's that.
Yeah.
Release the schedule and the rules before everybody signs up, so people know what
It
they're
would be
getting into.
so. We're
Less
really
comps.
spoiled with MRBC though, because we only have to play one team a week, and you can talk to the other team and pick a day to play and just get it over with. It's so nice comparatively.
Definitely.
And all of the qualms we had with scheduling with other teams in MRBC in the past, I don't give a shit about any of that anymore, because it's nothing compared to what these teams have had to endure through this tournament with rescheduling one match against so many teams.
It was insane. Now, I know you're just one guy, Bandit. Can't stretch you too deep. But standings with this tournament, is that going to affect? I mean, we lost AS from Division A. Is that going to have any kind of bearing? Or are
For
we?
MRBC,
Yes, for MRBC. Or are you going to concoct black magic and make it work? I mean, I know it's got to be a big question on you guys' mind, and so maybe we can get a teeny beat.
it's kind of changed a little bit since I joined the team. I think Frost was the primary guy to do NA, and of course Doyle did EU, and they did a fantastic job, I think, in the past and stuff. at least on the NA side, I'm close with Frost, and we do a lot of discussing. And last season was my first opportunity to get involved in that. I can't say it was without flaw. I made a mistake, especially I apologize to QQ Mercs. That's what you get for scrimming NS, kicking their ass, making us think that you're gonna be able to do really well in Div B, and then surprise. My bad. Can't get it all right. I'm sorry. But I guess the way it always used to be is they really stuck to the trying to come up with a history in MWC and then moving teams up or down based on whether they win or lose. Personally, I don't think that's very possible because teams are constantly changing. Rosters are constantly changing. New teams are forming from very talented rosters. I don't think you can start a team like that, and especially now that we have prizes, and that's really why I took a focus on that. When prizes start getting introduced, you can't put an amazing brand new team into Division E1, let them just completely stomp the crap out of everybody and just collect the free prize. I'd rather slot them where I think they belong, let them fight among their peers, and of course the shoutcasting added into that is my goal is to have every match be a 3-2 decision. And I was so close, like in a lot of the divisions where there were so many close matches, and it was super exciting. And that's what I want to have happen. So we might end up having to break rules on 1 up, 1 down, which is the original thing. I mean, rewrite the rules, but I want to just come up with some way to identify where people stand against their peers. And yes, I do think the World Championship will play a small part into it if their rosters are very similar to what is in the World Championship, because there's teams that have players sitting in their roster that will play in MRBC that missed the cutoff or were just above the 12 or whatever, that are talented players and will play. So we have to take all that into account. You got Paragon coming back now, which I've never watched them, but apparently they won Arhad one season and they're making a comeback now. They've got some players from 228 like Marshall and stuff like that, very talented pilot. You can't put them in Division E just because they're a new team. It's not going to work. So I'm going to rely on feelers, you know, if people have opinions on the team, and then of course tangible things, maybe even asking them to scrimmage some people. Just something that can give us some sort of hint as to where they stand. But I'm just trying to be as dynamic as possible. And my version of victory, like I said, all 3-2 decisions from Div A to Div E, all 3-2s, and I'll feel like a winner.
Does somebody get a pizza if that happens?
It's like the book it.
Or a hat.
We love to give out pizzas here. That's all.
Edible hat.
Excellent.
Some exciting stuff coming up for MRBC, but just today was released our lovely new roadmap for the next 3 months. What do we think of that? I mean, we got the Cyclops coming out soon. Multiple drop decks for those guys that play, what's it, Faction Warfare now?
You don't even know what it's called.
I don't even know what it's called.
Community warfare. It's faction warfare.
Community warfare, faction warfare. I've called
Faction
it like
warfare.
so many different types of warfare. I'm personally excited for the favorite mechs because I can favorite the Highlander 732B.
Oh, okay.
Actually, all 10 of them, hopefully.
See what I'm
all
saying?
10
See
of
what I'm
them.
saying, Bandit?
All 10 of them.
I got to highlight. I got to favorite. all
He-
10 of
He's
them.
got a flock.
10 of them.
Yeah, isn't it nice that we finally get an ability that we had in the very first client this game ever had?
That is true.
Yes.
I
That's
remember that.
And then they took it away, and we're like, "Why did you take that away?" And then they 3 years later,
Just give-
hey,
I played back in the beta, and when they took that away, I didn't even know what to say. I wasn't even mad. I was just kind of sitting there like, what?
At a loss.
What? Really?
Out of
It's just
Technically,
that
they
a lot of
didn't
people
take it away. They just didn't add it in the
Okay,
new
yeah.
version.
That is true.
it was
That is
a beta.
Yes.
Do not get needed.
It,
In terms of the
yes.
multiple drop decks, I don't play Faction Warfare, but it comes up a lot where people are, hey, you want to do one with us or something? And I don't mind just hanging out with the guys, especially if I'm not trying to like hard grind C-bills or something like that. One of the sticking points for me, besides of course the faction play gameplay, is that then it's like, oh, I gotta freaking come up with a drop deck. Having a bunch of pre-selected ones would be fantastic. Yes, I still have to monkey around with modules and all that, but having that essentially ready to go, clan or IS, Just pick it. Maybe I'll do one. Maybe.
I mean, most of the time I don't even put modules on my mech when I play Faction Warfare. I just make the deck, and I'm just like, oh, this is it. This is what we're going with. If there's a radar derp in here, I don't know. I hope so, but whatever.
We're gonna figure
Look
it
at the
out.
draw. And then there's always that awkward moment where you're like, okay, I've got a perfect ER deck, everything's module built, ready to go, perfect tonnage, no free tonnage, and then Victric Forge
Oh,
attacking.
That's my thing. It's like,
Yeah.
for a while there, for the giggles, I was running a double Banshee, Locust, Cicada, drop deck. And I was running it ERs, and we dropped on Victric Forge. I'm like, okay, see you guys later. I won't even drop call this. You can just
Just
Faff-
hit the overheat
faff
button.
around.
Good luck.
faff around.
Good luck.
In regards to that, in-game store improvements, we may now purchase multiple mechs or multiple things at the same time, which means that purchasing mech bays in your slew of 40 when they're on sale might go slightly faster. Who's excited about that?
The first thing that came to mind for me is anytime they have a mech sale, like they just had the Marauder sale. I already had a bounty hunter, so I'm like, oh, I'm gonna just pick up a couple more or whatever. Instead of buying them separately, I can just put them all in the cart and just, there you go. They're all on sale. Just get them all at discount. Just saves me a few seconds. I'm fine with that.
I've actually
See,
made a
it's total
mistake a
cost.
couple times and bought the wrong version twice when I was
Oh,
trying to
no.
buy 3 different ones. So
Oh no.
hopefully that doesn't happen to me anymore.
Yeah, it's pretty cool because, like, I know we had some issues with loading time, which I've noticed a reduction, especially with a lot of mechs. I mean, this is a little bit off topic, but, like, when you have, like, in the excess of, like, 100 and something odd mechs, loading times were absurd. And I think they have reduced. I mean, I haven't been on the primary client that
The
much.
saving time has been way down. Saving time
Yes,
has been way down,
reduced,
but
yeah.
there's a connecting
Connecting.
time that kind of makes up for it.
Oh, yeah.
So
Which is like
it-
way down in the checklist where they're like, oh, we're improving the whole save loading thing.
so but the thing is,
Optimizations to further, yeah.
the connecting thing is annoying, but the thing that killed me is when you go and you customize a mech and you save it and you wait forever, and then you're like, oh crap, I forgot to put this on, and you go put it on
Yeah.
and save it. And
I was
you're
a
like, "Oh,
lot
crap, I
more
forgot to put
annoyed by
modules
just
on."
saving because the connecting is
Yeah.
like it's just kind of part of your
It's a
downtime between
one-time-
drops.
One time every drop. I can
Yeah.
handle that. It's the,
Oh, yeah.
the like 2-minute wait every time I forget to do something on my Mac. God forbid.
There's
That
always,
killed me.
There's always the
So
one
it's still a-
guy.
I might actually
Yeah.
tinker in the mech lab now.
Yeah, there was
instead of
always that
just
one
using
guy that would
Smurfy.
get in the mech lab.
One of our
And,
pilots
like-
has every mech in the game, and hold on, I'm saving. Well, we might as well go take a piss break now because he's gonna be doing it.
Yeah.
Oh, I forgot my modules. Well, let's go do another one.
Art passes are happening on Forest Colony. I know that's a jarring change, but so it's gonna look prettier. So that
It
means
sounds to
goodbye
me like
Warframe.
it's around the path that they introduced, which I actually kind of like it.
Oh, I like the
Like,
path.
Yeah,
the
flanking
paths
options.
and stuff. So they're gonna make it. I hope they don't make it too pretty, but I don't
I
know
mean-
what they're gonna do to it. But
Too pretty.
We'll
My
see.
computer can't handle it. It's just gonna cry.
Gameplay improvements to battle grid and minimap. Great
like
leg
this.
orientation of enemy mechs. It snaps to 8 cardinal directions. So, I mean, it's a general idea, but that makes kind of makes sense as I mean, if we want to go into the fluff of it, it's not like you have an
I
exact
like that.
camera. You don't have an exact camera position on each mech. It's technical reading, but whatever. But that's cool. Because there's nothing like the icons are cool because you can just flip at your mini map and go, okay, I got 3 assaults in Delta 3. Just by noting the hex cross pattern. So
I do
I
like
wonder how
that.
they're gonna. I wonder how they're gonna implement the direction. We'll see. It could be good, it could be great, it could be bad. We'll see. But
Well, that's one thing that we lost when we got the minimap change. We gained knowledge of what it is, which I found extremely helpful, knowing whether it's an assault,
Very much
medium,
so.
or heavy, or light. That's been fantastic. And I think they could have done something like that and still maintained the arrows from the old system. But my understanding of it is the reason why they're getting rid of the arrows is constantly drawing that rotation is actually a huge drain on the UI resources. And that's probably why they have the cardinal directions thing, is because it takes less refreshes to when a mech's spinning in circles and stuff. It's not going to have a constant spinning arrow. It's going to be like click, 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 and that is less redraws and stuff. So I think that the whole minimap thing kind of had an emphasis on some sort of performance benefit to it.
Yeah.
and that's why we lost
for
some
that.
functionality, and now they're adding that functionality back in a little bit of a reduced state, and with a little bit of info warfare, like what they always wanted to do, where you have to have a UAV or something that gives you that information. But I'm fine with that. You know, I've been very comfortable with the new minimap now that they've got it back to sticking to your torso and showing where your legs are. That was all incredibly important. And then the addition of knowing the chassis is great. And so now adding in leg directions or the enemy directions will just make it that much better, in my opinion.
Oh yeah, it's great. And I'm all for game improvements that draw less on your PC. Because I mean, the game is a bit CP bottlenecked.
I remember a
in all
post I
honesty.
read a long time ago about how the minimap and the HUD in general was like the main draw of CPU in this whole game. Which
You can test it. You
Yeah.
go into any
Yeah.
match like on a like I tank on like River City and Forest Colony, 40 FPS steady or something like that. You hit what is it, Shift F11 is it? Right shift F11 turns your UI off and you shoot right up to above 60 instantly.
I believe
The
it.
biggest drain is the UI. So any changes they can make to the UI to make that better is fantastic, as long as they don't take away gameplay stuff. And that's why there was such an outrage, I guess, over the initial minimap implementation, is it took away so much from us. And we can't have that happen. We still need to maintain as much. I mean, I can make concessions, but maintain as much of the gameplay aspects of it that we need especially for comp. But just make improvements, I guess.
It might also help bring new players. I mean, if you lower the system requirements and make the things a lot more optimized and a lot more smooth, like more people might be willing to play the game. So I mean, that's always good for us, especially.
Or it just lets you make prettier maps. If you can make prettier maps
That's
and
true.
not tank it to 40 FPS, which is obviously a goal, is to make everything gorgeous. But I don't vote for those maps because I can play them, but it's not as enjoyable when it's sub 60, and you can see sub 60.
Oh,
You know what's happening.
Yeah.
especially when you're trying to especially with pinpoint. Not a big fan, but in that vein, in the pre-maps vein, how about Viridian Bog? The complaint before was the steps were horrible, right? They were hard to get up, and there was a little bit of one-sidedness to, I believe that's Team 2, the northern team. Is that Team 2?
The team that had the stairs.
Yeah, the
had
stairs.
A definite advantage.
Now it is literally the map of stairs. The other team's approach to Delta 4 is this gigantic, and I mean gigantic. And maybe it's just because I'm an assault pilot and I'm always running a Kodiak up like 40 seconds of stairs. But I have noticed a significant change because there was 2 complaints on that map, right? The one side had a very big issue pushing that Delta 4 corner with the carapace, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there was no way to really get up there. So there was a bit of an advantage in whoever got to that top area first kind of controlled the map. Now we have these huge stairs, and so we've seen the shift and also that pinch in the map, because if you look at Viridian Bog from the top, you have a bit of a pinch in the middle of the map. So it kind of bottlenecks things. It's just naturally, right? Because you don't want to go down to the water. It's inferior territory. Now we're seeing a lot more. I feel like Bog was more static, and now we're seeing much more like moving around and shifting and trading, which is a good thing, I think. And I've been pleasantly happy with the gameplay that I've been seeing on Bog. What I haven't been pleasantly happy with is the fact that its frame rate is a bit less nice on my system. And it's not like I'm not running a potato with a battery attached to it. I mean, that's all I gotta say there. I'm not gonna go into it, but that is a bit of a bottleneck. So I mean, I'm all for, like you said, the improvements there. But Bog, I would give it a decent thumbs up. I like it.
I love the new stairs in terms of climbing. That's biggest improvement by far. I was a little worried about the addition of stairs to the west side, because I felt like since it was very easy for teams to make it to D4 from the west side before the other team even hit the stairs, I kind of figured that west team is always going to take the top before the east team does, consistently, because of the spawn point locations. So I was a little worried that was going to be a huge shift in the western side's advantage. They only get the one set of stairs, of course. But I guess I'm going to have to watch it in comp play, because even if they're able to take top, I do think it gives an advantage to the east side because when you pushed through the center, you never really had a reason to push from the east side. But now you can because you can push around and then climb those stairs from the back. You didn't have that before. I've seen a lot more really well done rotations on Bog now that that back stair has been added because you can swing through and then climb up. You don't have to be on the long run all the way around back to the stairs again. You have the option to get back up on that side. So I don't know if it's an advantage to the west side at this point because it improves your options on the east side. You don't have to just stand and fight anymore. You're not stuck in one location.
I've definitely also seen the east side trading more against that position because so many people are like, oh, we can get up here. We should go up here. There is a bit of a bottleneck coming up those stairs. You can go left or right. Right takes you around the far side of Delta 4 and puts you in prime trading position from the other, what is that, Delta 3 coordinate? The far side from west side. And going left, prime trading position from the same position. And so it almost encourages that.
And there's the spire on the other side that can hit you too then from that side.
Yep. So I mean, it almost becomes at least from what I've seen a little bit, is it almost becomes a staring match of who's more willing and better at landing those quick trades early on and just forcing the other team down off the platform. And then from there, then it becomes a game of rotations and movement. But it's I guess it's the strength that you bring to the position initially that I think dictates that fight, because I've seen it goes so many ways, left or, west or east. Anyway, but in general, those improvements I think have benefited Bog. I think we've seen it picked more because obviously is this the new map? Whatever. It's fresh, it's new, and it's going in the right direction.
I can't wait to see it used in comp play because I really want to know how it stacks up and whether or not there's a side discrepancy with it at all.
In other news, farther down the list, we've got September, Terra Therma Redux. We'll see how that goes.
Skill tree
Hopefully.
revamp.
Skill tree, that could be cool.
I'm looking forward to that.
I'm hopeful. I'm cheering for it. Let's see some unit management improvements to faction play. We got that too. Select mech screen with editing drop decks. I mean, I'm enthused about that. New champion variants. That could be entertaining, I guess, if you want to farm experience in a certain mech, but meh.
It's most important
trial
for the new player
mechs.
experience.
Trial
new
mechs,
players.
that is cool.
Better trial
So
mechs.
We're looking at an IIC, a crab, baby crab, itty bitty crab, the Zeus, which is also loose, Orion IIC, Hunchback IIC, Grasshopper, Highlander IIC, and the Panther. So more trial mechs. Yay.
Cool.
Also
And
the
stock
night gear.
mode. Stock mode. You gonna do some stock
Herbies?
mode?
Stock Herbies? Herby Derby?
Stock mode. Let's do it.
I'm glad
I
that
might
they're
do some
finally
stock
adding
mode
that.
stuff.
Hey,
It's been requested enough, so why not?
I mean, I'm not sure why, but everybody's got their own tastes.
Another league can just come out of the woodwork with that. There's gonna be a new meta for it. The current
Kirby
meta might
meta
not. When you're not able to choose your weapon groups, you're gonna pick the mechs that do the same thing. It might be interesting to watch. Time to kill will probably skyrocket.
Return
But
of
the armor values. So some
Hey,
of
man,
them
There's
might.
apparently no quirks, so
Hey,
You
man,
can.
walking-
Oh, that's a
Wow.
toggleable option. So you can choose.
Oh, it
if
is?
there's no quirks.
Ah.
Yeah.
It is a legitimate
I like
tactic
that.
to walk backwards into your enemy. That's all I'm gonna say.
it's
It's a
I'm going to keep my
legitimate
mouth
tactic.
shut on that.
Anyway,
I will not
Just
glorify that with a response.
360 twists. There you go. Use all the armor.
so still in the hazy looking ahead area, we've got the energy draw system. I'm not going to spend too much time speculating about
I
that.
can't even
because
speculate.
We can talk about
Exactly.
that again later.
we can
on.
talk about that for like 3 hours.
The only
that should be an
only thing
episode
that I
unto
say-
itself.
The only thing that I consistently say with that is if they're making it so they're severely limiting alpha strikes and severely limiting those big hits, it's going to impact the viability of MWO as a watchable esport, because it's going to move more in the World of Warships direction, where it's just a grind, and then everyone dies. Counter-Strike, complete opposite spectrum. Boom, that guy's dead. Boom, that guy's dead. There's stuff to get excited about. We have a little bit of that in MWO with the big alphas. If they take that away, it's not going to be as interesting to watch.
I actually agree.
It's going to be like golf, where the only
100%.
people who watch are the people who play it, and that's a concern to me. And I hope that if it just turns into like World of Warcraft, managing your cooldowns as a mage kind of thing, to just do max DPS and then somebody dies, it might not be as interesting to watch.
WoW Arena is a good example of that, because basically when Arena first came out, like, you didn't have super long matches, and then they like added all this crazy buffs to healing and nerfs to damage, and at this point
and
it's
they all
like,
became drawn out, and
they're all drawn out, and it's basically just
catching
about,
them off a cooldown,
Yeah,
and then
pretty
suddenly
much.
their paladin dies, and then everybody dies. So
It didn't used to be like that.
Yeah, we don't want to see that, right? We want to avoid that, like you were saying, the chain fire online.
yeah, Chainfire Online would kill me. There needs to be something that you do that changes the course or outcome of a battle. Like, oh, he just got caught, or he had a bad peek and just got his head shut off. If you do a bad peek in Chainfire Online or whatever, oh, he took 2% damage and then ducked again. Like, whoa, that was such a bad peek. He got punished for that one.
The irony
I
of
was
that is that
behind
the
by
PPC and the pinpoint front load is going to be king in that meta still.
That's
Like
true.
it'll be even worse, because then the laser builds and the SRM builds won't have enough firepower that once they actually get in position to use their stuff, they won't be able to do anything about it.
Yeah.
Because they've been pecking away at you the whole time. It's
So that's a concern, but until I see it, I can't judge.
Yeah.
And there's always the
Hopefully
entire
optimistic.
possibility. Yeah, there's always the entire possibility that this system comes out and everybody's just like, but everything with a grain of salt.
autocannon
PT's
meta.
touching the ground.
Calling it now.
Who's excited? PT's
Was it
touching the ground.
inverse kinematics? Is it called?
Yeah,
Alignment IK. That's all I'm going to call it. Ground
The,
alignment IK.
the content creators like IQ Fish, who made This Is MechWarrior Online, he is going to soak that stuff up so much. He makes fantastic videos, and not having your toes clipping through a hill is just going to add to the immersion of those videos. That's for sure.
It's actually going to be big stompy robots instead of big clippy robots.
Improvements to faction gameplay. Faction play. We're going to include round table suggestions and stuff. That's okay.
It might
Okay.
get me back into it, but I doubt it. I guess we'll have to see.
So there's a lot in the future that's exciting, and we'll see how it plays out. I'm happily optimistic. I mean, I'm really looking forward to the qualifiers wrapping up for MechWarrior Online tournament and getting into the meat. See the meat. I want to see it.
Regional
excited.
finals. It's going to be
Yes.
so good. Can't wait.
SJR going to take that number one spot, right? NA?
See you in Vancouver, magician.
Come on.
that's the plan, right? That's the hope. But
That's
it's
what
gonna be
everybody
hard,
dreamed
man. It's regionals. It's gonna be so hard. Double elimination, just 5 teams. It's
You guys haven't lost
it's gonna
in
be something different.
the qualifiers yet, right?
Not yet. Nope.
Yeah. So
And go figure, what's the very last match of the entire qualifiers?
Well, it is us versus EMP, but
SJR versus EMP. I'm sure you're going to reschedule that,
It'd be
though, aren't
wonderful to watch.
I'm sure it'll get moved. I don't know. I don't remember
Yeah.
what day time it is. But I think part of the thing too is like with regionals, where this qualifiers. This is my last statement, I guess, is that even going against the Lords 228th, it wasn't like, oh, we have to win these matches, right? Like, well, our point is to get into the regionals through the qualifiers. It's not necessarily that the seed is going to be a big deal. Partly because it is the double elimination format. So that was our main goal. And we'll see what happens. We have no idea what regionals is going to be like. We don't know if we're going to play on the same client, or they can update it. So we're going to play with a new meta. Are we going to
Is
play
it gonna
in
be best out of
Canyon? Is it
3
going to
with-
be on
Yeah.
Frozen
I'm sure they're just
City,
gonna
I don't
take
know.
like the next 3 highest voted maps, which is what Mining Collective, Polar
Collective.
Highlands, and Tourmaline Desert.
Yeah,
That's
it's
what
Mining
I'm
Collective.
assuming.
Hopefully they'll do a little pass on that and fix some of the bugs. But
I'm gonna hold you to that
Yeah.
prediction.
Oh, well, I mean, it makes sense. I would laugh if they put Canyon Network into any of the remaining matches for the rest of the freaking.
I would cry, especially if I was on any of those teams. I'd shed a tear.
I sense a pizza.
All the strats have been done to death on that one. It's all the playbook is on the table. There's no
Yeah,
no
I think-
secrecy anymore.
I think Canyon needs to just kind of shift off into the woodworks for like.
I love the map. It's just I hate
love
the
the
map.
No, it is a
I
great
want
map.
a break. I want a damn break from the map. I don't want to look at it for a while. I just want to kind of like forget about it for a week or two. Come back to be like, yeah, this is still a good map.
And I've been having fun making up names for positions and forcing it on you people now. So now I'm gonna have to do that for other maps that I don't get to watch anymore.
Sandwich.
Like
Never forget
Bucket
the
Hill.
Bucket Hill.
Bucket Hill.
All right. Is there any closing comments? Any burning suggestions, questions, things people want to say? Get off their chest.
Sign up for MWOWC. Give us feedback. And play. And kick ass. That's it.
Play the game.
And enjoy the MWA casts. Apparently, I'm going to do some of those. Poop and Shard just did some casts today. 1v1 league. Something to watch.
Yeah, definitely tune into streams and watch these last few matches that Bandy gets the joyous opportunity to cast. Looking forward to those. Well,
Good
thank
stuff.
you guys for your time. I know it's been a bit, but I appreciate
It's been a
your,
conversation.
yes, it has. I appreciate your
was fun.
tenacity, and definitely good to get some different viewpoints in here and talk about some of these issues. So, thank you for showing up, and we look forward to seeing you guys around. Take it easy.